slavery of Islam.
I think that's fine when you're talking about prisoners of war, like you have done. But when I mentioned Bani Quraydhah, you actually said that this wasn't a situation of prisoners of war.
No, Bani Quraydhah was much worse.
Okay, so you have a situation where the Muslim army or the Muslims came to people, and Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh said, enslave their women and children, kill everyone with pubic hair, and take their wealth and share it amongst the Muslims.
Yes.
And you're right that in the context of the Muslim leader, he'd have to go for approval. And that's exactly what he did. And the Prophet ﷺ said, he has ruled by what Allah has sent down.
By what Allah judged above the seven heavens.
How do you justify that?
Okay. First of all, let's understand what Bani Quraydhah did. Because it wasn't a war between Bani Quraydhah and between the Muslims.
Okay.
What Bani Quraydhah did is they betrayed the Muslims in the Battle of the Khandaq.
Okay.
So the Battle of the Khandaq was one of the worst situations the Muslims had to endure. They had all the armies of the Arabian Peninsula came against them, and they had agreements of oaths and agreements and treaties with various tribes that promised that they would defend the Muslims. Not only did Bani Quraydhah break their promise and go back, but they also put the Muslim women and children under threat. And they opened the option to attack the Muslim women and children who were protected in Medina through their treachery. Now, this was an act of treachery. It was not a war situation. This was an act of treachery and an act of betrayal and an act of treason. A treason traditionally is one of the strongest punishments. Even today, in countries which have abolished the death penalty typically, they haven't abolished it for treason.
Yeah.
There remains on the legal statutes that treason, to that extent, utter betrayal and treason and breaking of your treaties and agreements, especially when it endangers the life of innocent people, is something which deserves a very severe punishment.
You don't think...
Now, I'm going to come to the whole story now. Now, when the punishment was going to be carried out upon them, these were people who followed the Jewish law. And the Jewish law was more severe than what Islam put upon them. And they knew that. They knew that if they were to be judged by the law of the Torah, that they would actually suffer worse and more horrific punishment than what they suffered at the hands of the Muslims. So what they decided is that they were not happy for the Prophet ﷺ to decide what happened to them. So the Prophet ﷺ, as the leader of the Muslims, agreed on something. He said, I want you to appoint your own judge. You choose from among the people someone who is going to judge what should be done for this treason and this betrayal that you've done. And I will agree. I will not intervene.
Okay.
So they chose one of their close friends in Jahiliyyah, Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He was their close confidant, a close ally of them in Jahiliyyah. They said, Sa'ad is not going to let us down here. Sa'ad is not going to give us any of this, the punishments of the Torah. Sa'ad here is going to go easy on us. So Sa'ad had been wounded in the battle of the Khandaq radiyallahu anhu, and he was on the verge of death.
Okay.
They brought him because of this treachery, and they wanted him. And the Prophet said, okay, I will not intervene. I'm not going to intervene in this judgment. Whatever Sa'ad is going to judge for you as the Muslim ruler, I am going to agree to his judgment. It's his choice. Mm-hmm. And they said, Sa'ad, you know what was between us in Jahiliyyah. And Sa'ad ruled that the males, adult males among them, not children, the adult males among them be killed. They're the ones who fought in the war. They're the ones who betrayed. All of the adult males were required to fight in the war. That's how wars work, right? All the adult males, they were the ones who were killed because they were the ones who deliberately peddled that treachery. Mm. Now they have been considered to be at war with us because they committed an act of war against the Muslims. Right. They opened the Muslim women and children to attack. They opened the Muslims to be attacked by the Confederate army from behind. They betrayed the Muslims in a way that was nothing short of treason. Now their property becomes war booty for the Muslims because now this is an act of war now. So we are going to now treat the innocent among you or the ones who are not participating in the war as prisoners of war under the normal rules of prisoners of war.
Which we discussed.
Under the normal rules of prisoners of war. And those who committed the treachery are going to have to pay the price of treason, which the way that they were killed is far, far less than what they were expecting from the law of the Torah. Yeah. When the Prophet ﷺ heard of the judgment of Sa'ad, remember he's put his hands up and said, whatever Sa'ad says, I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to intervene. He said, you have judged by what Allah judged with min fawqi sab'a samawat, above the 7 heavens. And this was a judgment that Allah was pleased with. It was a judgment that was in accordance with Islam. And it's very important that that remains as a penalty that is visible for people in terms of treason. And it was a big lesson for the other tribes around in the Arabian Peninsula, that you cannot make a promise of an oath that you will defend a people and then break your oath and be treacherous in your oath, because that is something which put the lives of really all of the Muslims in danger.